my money? You gonna give me my money? Where's my money, man?
Why did Kurt Cobain insist on using cheap, busted-up guitars? What made the baby on the cover come back to sue Nirvana again and again? And how did producer Butch Vig survive working with the most impatient man in rock history? From lawsuits to duct tape guitars, we're digging up the weirdest, wildest stuff you didn't know about Nevermind. This is 10 Things You Didn't Know About Nevermind by Nirvana. Unless you're Dave Grohl, in which case, hi Dave. Number 1. Kurt's $30 guitar collection that still sounds better than yours. Why did Kurt Cobain, rock legend, grunge icon, and frontman of Nirvana, choose to play guitars that were basically garage sale rejects? Was he broke? Pretentious? On a mission to troll Leo Fender's ghost? Well, maybe a little of all three. Let's dive into the weird, wonderful world of Kurt's bargain bin guitar collection. First off, the Fender Mustang, Kurt's ride or die. He once said, "Out of all the guitars in the whole world, the Fender Mustang is my favorite. I've only owned 2 of them." Yes, you heard that right, 2. Most rock stars own more guitars than they have socks.
I have 400 cars. I have 400 scars and 400 guitars.
But Kurt, they're cheap and totally inefficient, and they sound like crap and are very small. Wow, and that's the endorsement? Imagine what he'd say about a guitar he hated. He wasn't done roasting the poor Mustang. They also don't stay in tune, and when you want to raise the string action on the fretboard, you have to loosen all the strings and completely remove the bridge. Whoever invented that guitar was a dork. Fun fact, it was Leo Fender.
You guys look like... What do they look like, Jimmy?
Dorks. They look like a couple of dorks.
So yeah, Kurt Cobain called Leo Fender a dork. But hey, it's not like they ruined any future sponsorships or anything. I guess I'm calling Leo Fender, the dead guy, a dork. Now I'll never get an endorsement. Well, what about Gibson? We've been offered a Gibson endorsement, but I can't find a Gibson I like. Why play a $1,000 Les Paul when you can duct tape a guitar together for 20 bucks and call it a day? But not all of Kurt's guitars were trash. He had a 1966 Jaguar, which he actually cared about. That's the guitar I polish and baby. I refuse to let anyone touch it when I jump into the crowd. And what about the acoustic guitar on Polly? That's a $20 junk shop Stella. I didn't bother changing the strings. It barely stays in tune. In fact, I have to use duct tape to hold the tuning keys in place. Ah yes, duct tape. Holding punk rock together since, always. So why did Kurt Cobain play cheap guitars? Because he could. Because he wanted to. Because sometimes, the best music isn't about pristine gear. It's about emotion, raw sound, and making fun of dead guitar designers. And, yeah, being left-handed kinda limits your options a little bit. Want to show early support for the channel? Grab the Early Bear t-shirt. Link below and in the description. Rep the brand, join the herd, and help this channel grow. Let's get weird, Bear fam.
Half bear, half cow, or is he half man, half bear cow?
Number 10. Butch Vig's patience wasn't just incredible, it was Grammy-worthy. Imagine hearing Smells Like Teen Spirit for the first time on a beat-up cassette tape, recorded on a boombox, with a built-in microphone.
Where's that?
I got a beat-up boombox with a microphone.
Yeah, that's how producer Butch Vig first heard it, and we hear that he's still gathering pieces of his mind all these years later after having it blown to smithereens. A couple days before Nirvana showed up to record Nevermind, Butch gets a cassette in the mail. He pops it into his car stereo and hears Kurt Cobain's voice. "Hey Butch, we've got a new drummer. His name's Dave Grohl. He's the best drummer in the world." Okay, bold statement, but not wrong. Then they launch into Teen Spirit, and Butch says, "It was so distorted, it sounded like shit." Still, he could hear it. The chords, the hello, 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 the energy. Even though the recording was horrible, I could tell they were really, really tight. Then comes day one in the studio. No egos, no chaos, no hotel thrashing. Butch walks into the room like, alright, let's get started. Nirvana plugs in, and immediately launches into Smells Like Teen Spirit. And Butch? It blew my mind how good it was. It was so incredibly powerful. Yeah guys, that'll do. And from there, the Nevermind sessions were all business. It wasn't a party, they came in and meant business. Not bad, especially for a band whose first demo sounded like it was recorded by a toaster. So the most iconic rock song of the 90s started with a fuzzy boombox tape, a brand new drummer, and a band that just showed up ready to melt your face off.
The first day I walked into rehearsal with Nirvana out in the valley, Kurt had sent me a cassette a week before. Butch, here's our new drummer, Dave Grohl. He's the best drummer in the world. And then they started playing songs.
He's
and
right.
Because it was recorded on a boombox, it was instantly just massive distortion. But I could tell, even though it sounded horrible, how tight it sounded.
Mm-hmm.
And then I walked into the rehearsal room. I said, "Well, run through a song, you guys." And they played a song, and they played Teen Spirit, and it just crushed me how good he was and how good they sounded.
You knew off rip the first time you heard it.
I started pacing around the room, finished the song, and Kurt was like, "What do you think, Butch?" I went, "Play it again." Yeah. And then I took more notes down, but it was incredible.
Number 3, Kurt Cobain, Grunge Messiah by accident. Yeah. Kurt Cobain totally didn't want to be famous. He just accidentally wrote the most iconic rock album of the 90s, and then fell backwards into mega stardom. Oops. Let's get real. Kurt Cobain wanted success, the same way we all accidentally check our phone every 30 seconds. Okay, so maybe he didn't want to sell out, but he did want to sell records. Without a doubt. Behind the flannel and anti-corporate slogans, he had dreams, like actual notes in his journals that said stuff like, "When we play mega stadiums." And then it happened. Nevermind blew up like a Teen Spirit scented bomb. Nirvana was suddenly the biggest band on earth. They weren't knocking on the door of fame, they kicked it down, unplugged the phone, and threw a house party on MTV. But here's the twist. Success didn't fix Kurt. In fact, it made things worse. Because when your dreams come true, you're stuck with yourself. And a Rolling Stone interview asking if you're the voice of a generation. Which, to be fair, is a weird amount of pressure for a guy who just wanted to write noisy songs about alienation and maybe hang out with his cat. So he did what any grunge messiah would do. He leaned into the irony. Corporate magazines still suck, he sneered in an interview with a corporate magazine. Legend. He liked pleasure. He liked things. But the 90s alternative rock rulebook said you had to act like you hated everything, even your own happiness. Kurt wasn't allowed to be a capitalist. He had to be a cultural revolution. And revolutions don't come with stock options. So yeah, Kurt was conflicted. Ambitious, but allergic to selling out. Dreaming of fame, but crushed by the weight of it. He didn't want to be your hero, but he was. And maybe that's the most Nirvana thing of all. Number 4. Dave Grohl versus the click track, a drummer's nightmare. You would think that recording Nevermind was all flannel shirts, distortion pedals, and raw emotion. But behind the scenes, producer Butch Vig was out here breaking hearts, specifically Dave Grohl's.
I'm so happy.
Butch said, "I suggested to Dave that maybe he could try it with a click track, and he told me later that it broke his heart at the time because he had never played to a click track. He had just thought, man, I'm not good enough to be a session drummer." Well, Dave went home that night, and I always have a little drum machine with me, so I can set tempos and figure out what bands are playing. If they need to have some sort of timing reference, that's what I would use. And I gave it to Dave, and he took it back to their apartment. The next day, he came in, and we played Lithium, and he nailed it in one take. Perfect. From heartbreak to hero in 24 hours. And that is why Dave Grohl is the people's drummer. Heart, humility, and he'll absolutely destroy your snare head.
You little guy!
Number 5. How Butch Vig Jedi mind-tricked Kurt into doing overdubs. When Nirvana was recording Nevermind, there was one thing Kurt really didn't want to do in the studio. Record the same thing twice. But producer Butch Vig had a problem. Drain You needed to sound massive. So how do you convince a grunge icon to double his vocals and guitar tracks? Well, you bring in the Beatles. During the Nevermind sessions at Sound City in LA, Butch Vig was trying to get Kurt on board with layering sounds, more guitars, more vocals, more oomph. And at first, Kurt was into it. Butch says, "I'd go, let's go overdub that with a separate sound." And initially, he was totally up for that. But then Kurt's inner punk rock purist kicked in. "I don't want to do that again." He got really, really, really impatient. It all came to a head when Butch asked Kurt to double track some vocals. Kurt looked at him and said, "I really don't feel like I should do that. It just feels fake." Classic Cobain, authentic to the core. But Butch wasn't giving up. He had one more trick. So Butch goes, "The Beatles double-tracked all their vocals. Listen to John Lennon. Listen to Paul McCartney." And there was silence. 5 awkward seconds of it. You could almost hear Kurt weighing his punk rock principles against the Fab Four. Then finally, okay, that's right, the Beatles broke the Cobain code. So next time you hear Drain You, or any of Nevermind, and wonder how it hits so hard, just remember, behind the fuzz and fury, there's a little bit of Lennon and McCartney hidden in those layers, and a producer who knew when to name drop the Beatles.
I don't know how I got Kurt to do all those guitars. I think I kept saying, I think I was lying, basically saying, there's a problem with the track, it didn't record properly, or it's out of tune or something, so let's just do it again. So he thought he was doing the same part over. Meanwhile, I just kept putting him to new tracks.
Hey Herd, it's just me, one tired manimal, making all these videos. Want to help me sleep and make more content? Join the channel with a monthly donation for early access to new videos. Or hit that super thanks button like it owes you money to make a one-time donation. Join the ManBearCow herd. Help us keep the videos weird and continuous. Number 6. Half the lyrics, recycled. All the angst, authentic. In a 1991 interview, Kurt Cobain casually dropped this little bomb. At least 50% of Nevermind are old songs. They had been there for 2 years. 2 were written 3 years ago, before Bleach. Translation? Nevermind wasn't a sudden lightning bolt of creativity. It was more like Kurt opening his old notebooks and going, "Yeah, that'll do." Kurt said he didn't like to overthink lyrics. He liked to get them done fast. A lot of the lyrics were written just minutes before we recorded the vocals. Imagine being in the studio with Butch Vig and Kurt's just scribbling on a napkin. Take Territorial Pissings, for example. Written in an hour. He said he just dug through his notebooks, grabbed some old poetry, and Frankensteined it into a song. But don't worry, he did take his time on Smells Like Teen Spirit. That one took him 2 whole days. During the same week, they were recording the album. The man was basically the grunge version of turning in your essay 5 minutes before the deadline, and still getting an A+. So Nevermind might have sounded like a raw, angsty explosion of youth, but a lot of it had been sitting in a spiral notebook since before Kurt was famous. Moral of the story? Never throw away your old poetry. You just might accidentally write the next Smells Like Teen Spirit. Number 7. Kurt versus Killing Joke. The pettiest guitar riff war ever.
If you think it's all gone wrong, go on and on and on.
Did you know that Seattle grunge band Nirvana once had a feud with English rock band Killing Joke? Well, these things are bound to happen when one band creates a song that sounds too similar to another. Which begs the question, who did it better? Nirvana versus Killing Joke. In 1984, English rock band Killing Joke released 80s, a song about pushing through the difficulties of life in the 1980s. which would be the first single off of their 5th studio album, Nighttime. 80s would debut at number 60 on the UK singles chart and would be used as the theme song for Identification Discovery's docu-series, The 1980s, The Deadliest Decade. The song would also be used in various TV programs and films, such as the party scene from Weird Science. Or in the intro to the short-lived That 80s Show. Snaking throughout the track is a mesmerizing guitar riff in the key of E minor. Album critic Bill Janovitz of AllMusic would say, "Guitarist Gordy Walker shines on 80s, playing cyclical and repetitive riffs, each one a variation or inversion of the song's main theme, and each one a hook unto itself." The song would take on some controversy in 1992 when Nirvana released Come As You Are, which would be their second single for their now iconic album Nevermind. The Nirvana single would feature a melancholy take on Gordy Walker's riff performed in Killing Joke's 80s. This did not sit well with members of Killing Joke, who would later go on to tell an interviewer at Guitarist, "We were very pissed off about that, but it's obvious to everyone. We had 2 separate musicologist reports saying it was infringement. Our publisher sent their publisher a letter saying that it was, and they went, 'Boo, never heard of ya.' But the hysterical thing about Nirvana saying they'd never heard of us was that they'd already sent us a Christmas card." Nirvana had indeed heard of Killing Joke, as Kurt Cobain openly admit that the riff was similar to the Killing Joke single, a fact which left Kurt reluctant to even include Come As You Are on the album. However, the band's management was insistent that Nirvana include the song on Nevermind because at the time, they believed it was going to be the album's biggest single due to its commercial appeal. Keep in mind that before the album was released, nobody knew that Smells Like Teen Spirit would be the breakthrough hit connecting with the youth of a generation that it turned out to be. So the record label was really riding high on Come As You Are to help the band reach mainstream audiences. In 2000, band manager Danny Goldberg would confess, "We met to discuss what Nevermind's second single would be. We couldn't decide between Come As You Are and In Bloom. Kurt was nervous about Come As You Are because it was too similar to a Killing Joke song. But we all thought it was still the better song to go with. And he was right. Killing Joke later did complain about it." It is unknown whether Killing Joke actually did file a lawsuit against Nirvana, and with Kurt's passing just 2 years following the single's release, it has been assumed that any pending litigation may have been thrown out or dissolved to spare the burden on the surviving members of Nirvana. So who do you think did a better job? Do you prefer the original version by Killing Joke with its up-tempo post-punk rhythm? Or did Nirvana take over the airwaves during such a pivotal time in your youth that Kurt's take on the riff is a version that you are much more familiar with? Let us know down below in the comments. Regardless of any intellectual infringement, Killing Joke may have had the proverbial last laugh about a decade later when former drummer of Nirvana, David Grohl, would put his duties with Foo Fighters on hold to play drums on Killing Joke's 2003 self-titled album. When asked about the controversy, Killing Joke bassist Paul Raven assured Rolling Stone that it was all water under the bridge. Dave and I had a few laughs about that over the past year or so. He mentioned it to me when I met him backstage at Pantera a couple of years back. Okay, and now that we have that all settled, we can sit back and enjoy the music. But let's just try to avoid asking Captain Sensible from The Damned how he feels about everything. Number 8, Burp. Billy Corgan called. He wants his guitar tone back. In a twist of 90s rock irony, Billy Corgan, frontman of Smashing Pumpkins and professional sad wizard, heard Smells Like Teen Spirit for the first time and had, well, a few thoughts. Butch Vig says, "Do you want to hear the new Nirvana record?" He presses it. It's Teen Spirit. Step 1. Accuse Kurt Cobain of ripping off Boston. Yeah, the band from the 70s with guitars as shiny as space chrome. First of all, I was like, oh, he ripped off Boston. I thought, interesting. It's all coming back now. Teen Spirit is just more than a feeling with depression. And then when the song kicked in, I looked at Butch and said, "You ripped my guitar sound off." The stare that launched 1,000 passive-aggressive emails. And he kinda was like, I guess I did. Butch didn't need Corgan to teach him how to mic a cabinet, but apparently he needed Corgan University to learn how to layer guitars like a lasagna of angst. So now Nirvana's on the radio every 18 seconds, and every time I hear the guitar, I'm like, oh, there's my guitar sound. So next time you hear Teen Spirit, remember, Boston walked, Billy Corgan stacked, and Butch Vig copied and pasted.
And in a beautiful synchronicity, not too long after that, maybe 6 months, a year later, we were in Tokyo and Nirvana was playing, and we went to see them play. They got to the moment in the show where they were going to play Teen Spirit or something. You had a sense like here it comes, or it was an encore or something, and Kurt started playing More Than a Feeling.
No.
Yeah, and of course it went right over the heads of the crowd, but it was like, okay, so I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
Right?
Number 9. The baby on the cover grew up and lawyered up. You know that naked baby chasing a dollar on Nirvana's Nevermind cover? Yeah, that baby grew up. And he's been suing Nirvana multiple times over the album cover that made him accidentally iconic. In 2021, Spencer Eldon, aka the Nirvana Baby, filed a lawsuit claiming the image was exploitation. His argument? He never consented. Well, I mean, obviously, he was literally 4 months old and underwater. He said the photo caused him lifelong damages. But here's the catch. He had spent years celebrating the image. He recreated the photo multiple times as an adult. He had a giant Nevermind tattoo on his chest. He bragged about being the Nirvana Baby in interviews. And then he said, actually, I feel exploited. Meh. Yeah, the judge basically went, look, you had 10 years to sue. You clearly embraced the image. Dismissed. Then Eldon came back and said, okay, new argument, and filed again. Dismissed. Again. Rinse and repeat. By 2022, the court officially dropped it with prejudice, meaning stop trying to sue. Even the RIAA stepped in like the music industry's legal muscle and said, if this lawsuit somehow succeeds, it could have chilling effects on art and free expression. Basically, every cover with a baby, a protest photo, or an awkward haircut could suddenly be grounds for a lawsuit. So the Nevermind Baby really tried to chase that dollar, just like on the album cover. But this time, the courts were like, nah man, you're not getting it.
Oh, you almost had it. You gotta be quicker than that.
Still hungry for Nirvana knowledge? Want to impress your friends with useless but awesome facts at parties? Check out the affiliate link below for books that'll make you the Kurt Cobain of conversation, minus the anger. Click it, buy a book, support the channel, and maybe learn what Teen Spirit really smells like. Number 10. Butch Vig's patience wasn't just incredible, it was Grammy-worthy. Picture this. You're a music producer in the early 90s. You've got the dream gig, recording Nirvana's next album. Except, your lead singer is Kurt Cobain, and the man has the patience of a toddler on espresso.
Oh, look, Bart, now you got Maggie all upset. Relax, I'll give her some ice cream. Bart, that's coffee ice cream. It has caffeine in it. Well, I guess that'll make things more interesting for you now, won't it?
Luckily, Butch Vig was ready. He said, one thing I knew about the band, particularly Kurt, is he had no patience, so I had to be ready for each song we were going to track. I would always go in a couple hours early and make sure that the drums, guitars, and amps were ready, because when the mood struck them, I wanted to make sure we got it. Almost all of the songs they got in 1 or 2 or 3 takes.
All right, you Poindexters, let's get this right. 1, 2, 3. Bada bing, bada boom, I'm done. Learn from a professional, kid.
Okay, we are ready to roll. What the?
Because when inspiration struck, you had maybe 3 takes. 2 if Kurt skipped breakfast, and 1 if the moon was in retrograde. Fun fact, that ready for anything attitude is exactly why Nirvana rehired Butch after Bleach. As Chris Novoselic put it, one of the reasons why we decided to do Nevermind with Butch was because of how patient he is, which honestly makes Butch the Zen master of grunge. Seriously, he deserves a Grammy just for not quitting mid-session. But don't think everything ran smoothly. Take Lithium, for example. They tried tracking it. It wasn't working. Kurt got frustrated. By take 4, he exploded with so much raw rage, he screamed like his vocal cords were trying to escape his body. And bam, out comes Endless Nameless. Yep, that chaotic bonus track, born from a Cobain meltdown. And for the grand finale, Kurt smashed his left-handed guitar like it owed him money.
Where's my money? You gonna give me my money? Where's my money, man? Where's the money?
Session over, everyone go home, therapy optional. As Butch explains, one that was tough was Lithium. We tried in vain to track one afternoon, and it just didn't feel right. And that's when Kurt went crazy after the 3rd or 4th take, and they launched into the bonus track on Nevermind, Endless Nameless. It just came out of the blue, and I've never seen so much rage and frustration coming out of someone. You could literally almost see Kurt's vocal cords coming out of his throat. He was screaming so hard. Then he smashed his left-handed guitar, which ended the session for the day. But here's the thing, Butch didn't just survive, he captured magic. Because sometimes genius doesn't come from control. It comes from letting the chaos play itself out. And that is how Nevermind got its edge. If you enjoyed that Nirvana deep dive, we've got one more for you. 10 things you didn't know about in utero.